Hello students, welcome to your English class, and today we continue with the chapter 3 Men in a Boat. Students, in the previous video we read that how these three men, George, William Harris and Jerome, needed rest and relaxation. Actually, they were quite bored of their daily routine life. They needed rest, a complete change, and they came up with various ideas that where should they go out for a change. Now they had a week's time to enjoy themselves. So these friends continue with certain suggestions. Now the narrator says, I agreed with George and suggested that we should seek out some retired and old world spot far from the madding crowd and dream away a sunny week among its drowsy lanes. Now the narrator says that he agreed with his friend George and suggested that they should seek means they should find. Now they want to go to an old world spot, a spot which is far from the madding crowd. A spot which is quiet, calm, peaceful. And they wanted to dream away a sunny week. I told you that they had a week's time to enjoy. So they wanted to have a sunny week. And the place where they would go among its drowsy lanes. Drowsy lanes means sleepy lanes. Students, in the afternoons when there is no one outside the houses, the lanes seem to be deserted and sleepy. So they wished and longed to go to some sleepy lane, some half forgotten nook, nook means corner, hidden away by the fairies, out of the reach of the noisy world. Now what they disliked most was their life in the noisy world. They wanted a quiet place far from the crowd. Now what else did they want? Some quaint perched eyrie on the cliffs of time, from whence the surging waves of the 19th century would sound far off and faint. Now they looked for some old-fashioned. Quaint means old-fashioned. Eyrie is a large nest of an eagle. Now, they felt that they could find an old-fashioned large nest of the eagle perching on the cliff. Perching means resting, seated on the cliff. Cliff means a steep rock face. Actually, over here, they are talking about olden things, old-fashioned things, things that were there years ago. And they wanted that wherever they go, the surging waves of the 19th century would sound far off and faint. In this 19th century, they felt that life had taken a different turn. They were very busy in their lives. They were getting depressed and they wanted to go to a distant place from where the surging waves of the 19th century, means the memories of the 19th century, everything from the 19th century would far off, distant and faint, and they could feel relaxed. Now at this, Harris said he thought it would be humpy. Humpy means interesting. And he also said that he knew the sort of place the narrator meant, where everybody went to bed at 8 o'clock. Now, Harris found it interesting, but Harris then suggested that if they wanted rest and change, nothing could beat a sea trip. So what was Harris' suggestion? To go to a sea trip. Now Harris had suggested going to a sea trip, but the narrator objected to the sea trip strongly. The narrator was not in favor of going to any sea trip. What he said, see? He said, a sea trip does you good when you are going to have a couple of months of it, but for a week it is wicked. Now they realized that they were going out only for a week, and going out for a week to a sea was not a good idea. Say taking sea voyages is good. Sea voyage means a long journey by sea and it takes months. But here these friends had only a week, so they couldn't go to sea. Moreover, they discussed their experience of what they had heard from their friends or relatives who had taken such dangerous journeys and the disastrous effects of seasickness they had encountered. Encountered means faced. So everybody said their faced against the sea trip, the narrator also. And when they were talking about this, George came up with an idea, in fact, a wonderful idea. He said, why not go up the river? And he explained why would they go to river. He said that when they went to a river, they will have fresh exercise, fresh air, it would be quiet, and the constant change of the scene would occupy their minds. And they also felt that they would be working hard on rowing their boats, and that would give them a good appetite and make them sleep well. So, students, George suggested going out to a river. Now, Harris and the narrator, what opinion they had about George was that George was actually very fond of sleeping. Whenever he found a chance, he went to sleep. He could sleep for hours and hours and hours. Now, Harris said that if George talks more about sleeping, having a good sleep, it is really very, very strange. And he even said that if he did sleep anymore, he might just as well be dead. So, in this paragraph, not much to say. Harris feels that George should not always talk about sleeping. Still, in the next paragraph, Harris accepted that the idea of going to the river would suit him to a T. Now, river would suit him to a T means to suit perfectly. To suit to a T means to suit perfectly. And everybody liked the idea. And what was more surprising to both these friends was that how could George come up with such a sensible idea of going up the sea? Now, students, we know that they had a dog also. The dog's name was Montmorency. Montmorency was Jerome's dog actually, and he was a fox terrier who always accompanied them on these trips. But this time, Montmorency did not like the idea of going up the river because most terriers regard water with deep misgivings, and dogs generally do not like to get wet. So, Montmorency did not like the suggestion of going to the sea. The dog felt that there is nothing for him to do there. The scenery was not in his line, and if he saw a rat, he wouldn't stop. They wouldn't stop for him. And if he went out to sleep, they would get fooling about with the boat and slop him overboard. So there he had his own reasons for not liking the idea of going up the sea. Now, students, in the next part, we'll learn more about their plans.